Hi guys. So in this video, I will be explaining you about Spring Batch. Okay, so this is one of the most important concepts which has been used in the projects lately. Okay, so it has been used in the projects in past. A lot of banking domain clients basically for all the banking domain companies, people are making use of this Spring Batch mechanism to process like multiple data in chunks. Okay, so how is it working internally? How Spring makes use of Spring Batch mechanism to process huge loads of data. Okay, so that all things we will be discussing in this video. So stay tuned till the end and let's get started. I hope you can see my screen now. So from here, I will be starting with Spring Batch. Okay, so I will be explaining you with respect to H2 database, and with relational database it will be a homework for you. Okay, so you can make use of Oracle SQL, you can make use of MySQL, and you can log into the MySQL database server and you can check like whether the data is there in the database or not. Okay, I will show you with in memory H2 databases. Okay, so let's get started. So what is Spring Batch? So Spring Batch is one of the core module of the Spring framework. Okay, so entire Spring framework, if you consider, Spring Batch is known as one of the core module of it. Why it is known as one of the important core module? Because you can create a robust batch processing system with the help of which you can process like millions of records in chunks. Okay, and it process data in a very lesser time. So just imagine like millions of records are coming and its data is getting stored into database from a file. So let's suppose I'm considering one file, dot that file or certain other kind of files. And from there, like lakhs and lakhs of data is present in that file. And from there, I need to process all those records into database. So if you follow a normal way of doing this process, like copying the data from that file to database, how much time it may take? If you are doing it synchronously one by one, how much time it may take? It may take lots of time, right? But if you are doing in chunk with the help of Spring Batch, you can do it in within few seconds only. Okay, so that is the power of Spring Batch, and that's why this makes it one of the important core module of entire Spring framework. Okay, so batch processing is nothing but it's a technique with the help of which it processes large group of data. Okay, it doesn't process one by one, but it processes large group of data at an instance. Okay, so basically it is used where we have to process huge and huge volumes of data. So where huge volumes of data comes into picture, especially in banking domain applications, in that places we have to make use of Spring Batch. I hope you got the process of it. So now we will be going in depth like how internally Spring Batch is working, and after that we will be going through the code with one of the example, like in real time scenarios in projects, what kind of questions are being asked in the interview and what kind of work is being there in the project with respect to Spring Batch, that I will be explaining you. Okay, so this is the basic structure which internally makes use of in Spring Batch mechanism. So here you can see there is something called as job launcher. Okay, so here if you can observe, there is a job launcher which actually launches the job. Okay, so you know, right, when you are going to play, okay, so there will be some launcher who is going to launch a particular player. Like that particular player will be playing as a bowler, that particular player will be fielder, that particular player will be batsman. So there should be a launcher for that. So who decides who will be launched in the main Indian cricket team? That is a BCCI, right? The main board of council. So here also there is a launcher, job launcher, who launches like which kind of job it has to run independently. Okay, intermediary, what kind of job it needs to get launched. So from here, job will get executed. Okay, and then there is a job repository which actually maintains the state of the job. So there is a transaction manager which is being done internally where it processes the data into database and it maintains the state of the data. Okay, so maintains the state means what? You want to save data into DB, you want to delete data into DB. So it will make sure like whether the data is getting processed properly or not. Okay, so that's the way it checks like the state of the database is maintained properly or not, with the data being inserted in a proper synchronized fashion or not. Okay, so it will check one by one. So there are two ways basically. One, you can do it in a synchronous fashion as well, and another way is with the help of async task executor. So both way I will be showing you. Okay, so next comes step. So job will now call the step. Okay, so there are three steps in lying in between. So job repository will be common in all. Job launcher will launch the job. Okay, from here job will get launched, and from job internally it will call the step. Okay, so job can have n number of steps. So here if I show you, Let me change the color. So here, if I show you, job can have n number of steps. So this is one of the step. It can have n number of steps like this. Okay. It can have like a step 1. This can be step 2. Okay. This can be step 3. And like that, there can be n number of steps like this. Okay. So similarly, for one step, okay, if I'm going to step now, so one step can have n number of reader, writer, and processor. So this is the combined package which consists of step. So step means one step at a time. That means one process you are following at a time. That is a step basically. So job launcher internally calls job, and job internally calls step. So job can have n number of steps to process, and one step can have n number of reader, processor, writer combination. Okay, so where reader and writer is must, we have to implement this, and processor is optional basically. So if you want to process like certain kind of implementation, you have to provide, like you have to add certain kind of condition. So there, in that case, you can make use of processor. So if it's totally optional, if you don't want to use, it's totally fine. There is a inbuilt processor like custom writer is present. Okay, so that you can add it in the item writer only. You don't have to make use of item processor. So it's totally optional. If you want to use, you can use. If you don't want to use, it's totally fine. Okay, so this is the entire process of Spring Batch process internally. So like this only the entire process works. So this is the brief high level design of Spring Batch mechanism. Okay, so now let's jump onto the some of the important thing which I want to discuss with you. Okay. So now we have to understand like when to use this Spring Batch mechanism. There should be certain scenarios where we have to make use of Spring Batch, right? So basically in these type of scenarios, Spring Batch will be used when we have to process billions of data, millions of records in a very less time. Okay. So let's suppose in the case of billing analysis system. So if you see, there is a CSV file which has been maintained, which consists of all the customer information in the form of billing. So every day, if I consider in a entire month basis, there can be thousands of customer coming into medical hospital, right? So in that hospital, it can have a record of thousands of customers. So how can you process those many number of customers in very less time? So in that scenario, Spring Batch will be very much helpful. Second scenario will be report generation system. So in that scenario, what is happening? There will be a source and there will be a destination. So source will contain some file. So let's suppose it's a .dat file or CSV file or any kind of file. From there, you have to store the data into another system. It can be a CSV, it can be a DAT file, or it can be a database. Okay, so it can be to and fro. If I'm telling from a particular file to database, it can be interchanged as well. It can be from database to CSV file. Okay, it can be CSV to DAT file. It can be anything. The main motto here to understand is to process billions of records. It's not the motto is not to understand the source and destination. Source and destination can be anything. The main thing is how can we process millions of records in a very less time, where Spring Batch comes into picture. Okay, I hope you got the clarity in which kind of scenarios Spring Batch can be made use of. So here it's a more in-depth understanding, which I have already told you before, like job can have n number of steps. So here, which I have already shown you, the job is having multiple steps. I've shown you 2 steps. So it can have 3, 4, 5, 6 n number of steps depending upon our requirement. Okay. So job launcher launches this job, and at the same time, it maintains the job repository as well. Okay. Then within that n number of steps, each step will consist of item reader, item processor, and item writer, in which reader and writer is mandatory to override, and processor. Why reader and writer is mandatory? Because item reader will read the data from the source file. The source file can be CSV file, it can be Excel file, it can be DAT file, it can be any kind of file. Okay, it can be database also. And the destination can be database, it can be source file or Excel file or CSV file or any kind of file. Okay, so source and destination is fixed. So that's why item reader and item writer needs to get overwritten, needs to be implemented. But item processor, which is lying in between, it's totally optional. Okay, if you want to add certain kind of condition, like how can you process the data? Like I want to filter certain records from the source file, and then we have to enter or we have to create an entry into the database or into any kind of file. In those scenarios, we have to make use of item processor. So, but it can be replaced completely as well with composite item writer, where every logic can be put inside the writer only. Okay, so that all things are present. So I will be showing you through code like what I mean to say. So similar to that, this is one of the step. there can be n number of steps processing those item, reader, processor, and writer. I hope you got the clarity on this. Okay, so now let's jump onto the code and see like how we can implement this reader, processor, writer, this jobs, steps, job launcher. How can we implement all these things? Okay, so let's jump onto the code and see. So here it is the starting point, basically the demo application part. It is the main method where Spring application starts. Okay. So here I have added annotation enable batch processing. So what happened with enable batch processing? So with the help of this annotation, it makes sure that Spring makes use of batch processing to process those chunks of data. There will be multiple millions of records, right? So to process those in batch, it signifies to the Spring framework, to Spring container, like we have to make use of batch to process millions of record. Okay, so if you go through this annotation, you will get much clear clarity on this. So here it is importing from batch configuration selector. Okay, so here the target is element type, retention is runtime. Okay, so it's actually running at a runtime. So check now, here it is written, indicate whether the configuration is going to be modularized into multiple application context. If true, then you should not create any bean job definition in this context, but rather supply them in separate context through link application context factory. Okay, and it returns Boolean value, indicating whether the configuration is going to be modularized into multiple application context, and its default to false. So it contains one method called modular method, which returns false. And if you want to add certain configurations into it, multiple application context into it, you can add it. So I will show you like a bean application context, I can add it. And then we don't have to run postman to send the data. From the main method only we can process it. So that way is also present. Okay, so it enables batch processing basically. So the starting point is the customer entity class. Okay, so here I'm making use of Spring JPA basically to store the data into the database. Okay, so here I've created entity class. So at the table, so here customer information we are storing. So basically the requirement is there is a dat file. In the dat file, it contains some customer information. Customer information can be these things like ID, customer first name, last name, email, gender, contact number, country, date of birth. These details will be present in the file in the form of pipe operation. Okay, so pipe separated, there is a delimiter pipe which with which all the informations are separated. Okay, so let me show you like how that data will look like. So this is a .dat file which I have created in certain directory in C. So if I open it, let me open it. So here you can see this is a .dat file basically. So ID, first name, last name, email, gender, all these are separated by pipe. Okay, so this type of information should be there into a particular file, and all the information present within this file will also be separated with pipe separated information. Okay, so one pipe, the first name, pipe, the last name, like this, all information will be stored. So it contains like 1,000 records. Okay, pipe separated. I hope you got the clarity like what I mean to say here. So this is the file which I have stored in one of the location in C directory. Okay, and I've created customer ID as the primary key over here, and rest all are normal columns. Okay, so like this. And if you want, you can add @ not null, @ not blank. Those things you can add. For now, I haven't put those things. It's for experimental purpose. If you want to add more features into the column part, you can add it in the later stage. Okay. So main thing is I want to show you the exact framework, like how through code you can implement this. So there is customer repository which extends JPA repository. So here we have to pass the class type which is the entity type customer, and it's a return type of the primary key which is the ID. ID's return type was string. So here I have put string. Okay, so forget about this as of now. So now we have to do configuration now. Okay, so in Spring Batch, the most important thing is how are you configuring it. So here, if you observe over here, so I've created @configuration over it. So that means it's a configuration class which consists of multiple beans. So whenever you are writing @bean over a method, so that means you are configuring the method to behave in a certain way which you don't want the Spring container to behave like. So let's suppose Spring container is injecting a certain kind of dependency at a runtime as and when required, but you want to change the behavior of that dependency injection, which initially Spring container is doing by default. You want to change that behavior. So for that, you need to configure that bean separately in the form of method. Okay, so I am auto wiring now job builder factory. Okay, so it's a kind of it's making use of factory design pattern basically. So there is a job builder, okay, which sets the job repository automatically, and it is making use of job builder factory to run the job. So there's a step builder factory. It is also a factory design pattern. It is being made use of internally. Okay, so it internally makes use of step builder, okay, which sets the job repository and the platform transaction manager. So platform transaction manager is nothing but it sets the platform for the transaction which is happening with the database, like save operation, delete operation, and then update operation. Okay, so we are auto-wiring customer repository, which is extending JPA repository, which I have already shown you. Then platform transaction manager, which I already shown you. Then I'm creating one constructor basically, which consists of builder, job builder factory, step builder factory, customer repository. Okay. Then here I am passing the file location, like where that file is present. You can't directly hard code the location, right? So that we have to put it in application.properties file or YAML file. So here, if you can observe, I have put file locator over here. So in file locator, I have given the directory path of the exact file. So this is my path, basically. This is my file path. Okay. So in the real time scenario, what you can do, this file name can get changed. Okay. So in that scenario, give only till this give path till this position, and then through code, you can write one utility class method with the help of which you can fetch the files present into the directory. So you have to fetch the file present in that directory and then you have to process it. In the real time scenario, you have to do it this way. But as of now, for demo purpose, I given the entire path of that file. So this is the entire path of the .dat file, which is the source file from where we have to fetch the record and put it into database. Okay. So I have configured all the H2 database configurations like Spring H2 console. So here it will show entire data in the console. Okay. So I've given the console path. Like if I'm searching in the localhost 8080, we have to give the path over there in the URL. So that is H2-console. Then database data source URL is this H2 memory test DB. Okay. Test DB is a database basically. And driver class name is this one, org.h2.driver. Username is root, password is root. It's by default. You can change this as per your requirement. Okay. Then this is a file locator. Then JPA Hibernate DTL auto. So it will automatically create the table and drop the table based upon how is the requirement going. Okay, so it will automatically do that. You don't have to write any kind of query for creating and dropping table. Okay, it will show SQL if you are writing this. It will show all the SQL changes which is going on while running the application or hitting the particular endpoint. Then there is a dialect which we have to add for H2 database. So that we have to add over here. Then we have to disable this. So this is very important. Spring.badge.job enable equal to false we have to set. Okay, so what's the meaning of this? So if you are not setting this as false, and what will happen as soon as you run the application, the bad jobs start getting enabled. Okay, so we don't want that. We want that bad job to get enabled when I am hitting it lazily. Okay, I should not want to eagerly start the bad job as soon as the server gets started. I want to get start when I want, not when the Spring application want. Okay, so for that sake, we have to set it as false. I hope you got the clarity like how application.property has been set up over here. So now let's understand the Spring Batch configuration. So we were till here, file location was set here at that value. Then here comes the reader. So here, if you see, I have created a bean over it. Okay, it's basically a bean which specifically configure like what the reader thing will do, what this reader will do. The main purpose of this reader is to read the data from the file. Okay, from the source file. So what we have made use of, we have made use of flat file item reader. So this is basically a part of a class which accepts customer type data. Here it may change based upon your requirement. It can be profile, it can be employee, it can be anything based upon your requirement. Then there is item reader equal to new flat file item reader. Okay, with the help of this, it will actually read the data from the source file. So we are setting the resource, okay, like where exactly the file is located. We have to pass that file location. We have to set the name of that file, that file reader. Okay, so this is a reader. For this, we are setting the name. Okay, so that is that file reader. Then how first line we have to skip. Why we are skipping the first line? Because first line is the header. If you remember, the first line in that file which I have shown you was ID, first name, last name. I don't want to read those things. Those are just the header names. I want the real data. So real data starts from second line. So that's why we are skipping the first line. Okay. Then we are setting the strictness to false. Why we are setting the strictness to false? Because if I'm not setting the strictness to false, then what will happen if for any column the values are not present? it will throw exception. Okay, that means data is not present in the source file. So like that, it will process like data is not present, so we will not be able to process it. So we should not throw any exception when resource file not present or data within that is not present. In that scenario, the strictness is set to false, and we are setting the line mapper. So with the help of line mapper, what is happening? With the help of line mapper, we are converting the .dat file internal information line by line. Whatever data is there, we have to map it to the Java object. Okay, so we have to convert it in the form of Java object, then only we can process it into database, right? So to convert the .dat file internal information to and map it to Java object, for that purpose we are making use of line mapper over here. So here you can observe this line mapper. We have made use of default line mapper. Okay, so it is one of the class. So here you can observe it's two-phase line mapper, which whose implementation consists of tokenizing of the line into field set. Okay, followed by mapping to the item. We are mapping to the particular item. Okay, so for mapping to the particular item and converting that entire set of information of that file into a particular Java object, for that sake line mapper will be used. So there is a delimited line tokenizer class also being used. So it implements that, it splits the input string. Whatever input string are separated by pipe, no, we have to split it. Just like in string, there is a concept of split method, right? str.split. We are splitting based upon the certain placeholder, like it can be comma, it can be space, it can be anything, right? So similar to that, there is a line tokenizer. I want to split the entire line based upon this delimiter, which is pipe operator over here. And then here also we are setting the strictness to false. It's a similar concept. Okay. Then here I am setting the names as ID, first name, last name, email, gender. So these were pipe separated. So it should contain the same name as you have put it in the .dat file. Same name you have to put it over here. Okay. Then bean wrapper field set mapper. With the help of this, we are actually mapping the data with the Java object customer.class. This is a target type being set, and we have to map whatever field values are coming from the file, that file, to this customer entity class. So that mapping should be there. Okay, so for that sake we are making use of it. Then we are setting the line tokenizer, line mappers, setting line tokenizer. Then we are setting field set mapper, and then we are returning the line mapper. I hope the concept is clear till now. So this was still reader. So reader, it's just set the resource, read the data from the file. With the help of line mapper, it maps the data from the .dat file to Java object. Okay, with the help of bean wrapper, field set mapper. Okay, now comes the writer. Here there is a concept that we have to understand. We have created a configuration under in bean for that. So here what is happening? So there will be two type of thing. Either the data already exists into database, or the data is not present in the database. There can be two type of scenario, right? So let's suppose the data is already present in the database, and again you are trying to insert the same data in database. Then what will happen? Just tell me. It can show like a unique constraint violation exception. It may throw, right? So that is a form of exception it will throw. It will show SQL constraint violation exception. So that thing we have to omit. To omit that, first we have to check whether is there any data present into that database or not with respect to that ID. So if that is present, we have to remove that line, and then we are going forward with inserting data into database. Okay, so this is the way basically. So we are making use of repository item writer over here. Why? Because we have made use of JPA repository. So that's why we are making use of repository item writer. Okay, so it can be done in other way as well. You can make use of JDBC batch item writer. Okay, so if you are making use of JDBC template, so it may return type may vary depending upon what type you are using. If you are using JDBC, then JDBC type we have to provide. If we are making use of JPA or CRUD or paging and sorting repository, then corresponding to that you have to make use of repository item writer. Okay, so like that we have to implement it. Then there's a delete item writer. Then repository item writer we are making use of. It's a class. Basically, it wraps the CRUD repository from the Spring Data JPA. Okay, so it contains repository item writer. And here we are setting the repository, like what kind of repository? It's a customer repository. Okay, we are setting the method name, like what operation we have to provide. So delete is an operation, like it internally checks data by ID. Okay, so it's delete by ID. So here we don't have to write any kind of query. That is a power of JPA basically. So I will show you for insert also. See, for insert, we are just setting the method name as save. We are not writing like insert into this table name values, passing the value. We are not writing like that. Okay, just we are writing the save method. So whatever data present in that file, it will be saved automatically by after mapping. It will save automatically to database. Okay, so we don't have to write any kind of query over here. So that is the power of JPA basically. So if you are making use of JDBC reader or writer, in that scenario you have to write a query also. Okay, so first we have to delete the data by ID if it is present into the database, and if after getting deleted we have to insert into the database. So how to do in proper sync, like first it should delete, then it should insert. For that, what we have to make use of, we have to make use of composite item writer. So here you can see I have made use of composite item writer. So it's a replaceable thing. If you don't want to make use of composite writer item writer, then try to make use of customer processor. This is a processor class, which I've already told you, like three things were there: reader, processor, and writer. So either you can make use of composite item writer to get rid of this entire class, or you get rid of customer composite item writer and make use of this customer processor. It's totally your choice. So here we are making use of customer processor, implementing item processor, which consists of process method. So if you go inside it, it basically has the process method present in it. Okay, only one method. It's a kind of functional interface, you can say, like it contains only one method over it. Okay, so yeah, this is the thing. So I have overridden this process method, and then we are checking whether data is present into the database or not. With exist by ID, there is one method, exists by ID. So we are fetching, we are getting the ID basically, and we are checking whether the ID present in the database or not. If the ID is present in the database, we are deleting it. There is a delete by ID also present. We are passing the ID over there. We are deleting it. Okay, and then we are returning it. So this is the basically deletion operation that we are doing after checking the existence of that ID. This is the customer processor. So if you don't want to make use of it, then directly you can make use of a delete item writer, insert item writer, and make use of composite item writer. So here what we are making use of, we are creating object of composite item writer. Okay, so here it will pass list of item writer, and it is extending from the super class, which is customer. Okay, so here you can observe the list item writer has super customer. Okay, it will be having a generic of output type customers. Okay, so we are setting the writers data, like delete item writer we are setting, insert item writer we are setting, and we are setting the delegates as writer. So first we have added delete item writer, then I have added insert item writer. So it will make sure like the data is already exist in the database or not with that ID, which is the primary key. So if data is already existing into database, it will delete it with delete item writer, and then it will insert the new record into the database. I hope you got the clarity. So it will work with this composite item writer. Okay, so if you are making use of processor, this whole method is not required for you. Okay, you directly have to jump to the step. So this is a step. So this is a name I've given based upon our requirement. So basically this is the step method. So there were three steps I have told you, right? We have to, there is a job launcher which will launch the job. From job there is a step. From step there is a reader, processor, and writer, in which reader and writer are mandatory. So this is the, we are going from back. So I have implemented reader, then processor, writer. Okay, composite item writer, those all things I've implemented. Then it is being passed to a step. Then after passing to the step, we have to pass it to the job to run the job. Okay, so then step is implemented over here. Is step builder factory is there. Okay, we are getting the that step, that is the name basically for the step which we are doing. So I've given this name, so you can give any name based upon your requirement. So I'm passing the that file information to database, so that's why I've given that hyphen step. So we are, this is the input customer type, and output is also customer type. That's why I've given input output as customer only. We are setting the data in the form of chunk of 10 records to process at a time. That's why we have given chunk of 10. That means 10 records will be processed at one go. Then 10 records will be processed at one go. So like that, data will be processed in chunk. Then first reader will be called to read the data. Then writer will be called, composite item writer, which will actually do the deletion first, then insertion. Okay, and then transaction manager to maintain the state of the information in database. Okay, and then it will build the entire flow. So here, if you see, the entire flow is clubbed up in the form of the chain. Like first, it will fetch the data in the form of chunk. It will read the data. Then it will write the data into the destination file. Okay, it can be database, it can be any kind of CSV file or any kind of file. And then we are doing the transaction manager to maintain the state of the database. Okay, this is the entire flow. And then after completion of the step, we are passing the information to the run job method. So here, if you see, we are setting the name of this job as import customer, because the operation is to import customer and put it into database. And then there's a flow method where we have to pass this method. Okay, so here in run job, it is calling the step method. Step method is internally calling reader, writer, and transaction manager. Okay, so here it will end it. So after the entire flow gets over, okay, so here you can also do the chaining of multiple flows. It can have multiple steps as well, right? So in this scenario, only one step was there. So I have put one step only here. Okay. And after this, I have ended it and built it. It's a kind of object creation with the help of builder design pattern. Okay. So that's why design patterns are very much important to understand. Then only you can understand these things like how builder factory.get is working, how build method is working. So if you have not seen that, you can see one of my video of builder design pattern. From there, you will get the idea like how this builder factory is internally getting implemented. Okay. So this is the thing which we have implemented. So now I hope you got the entire clarity like how it is getting implemented internally. Okay. So there is a batch job launcher which we have created over here. Okay. So it will have launch job method. So here we are passing the parameters. Like there is a job parameter builder as well. Okay. So we are adding the string value, file name and file name. Okay. So this will be used when we are not making use of this one, basically from if you don't want to set the data through postman. Okay, so for that purpose we can make use of this job launcher. Okay, so when we are going through this batch processing demo application, so here we have commented out this part. So I will show you like how that batch job launcher will be used. As of now, I'm not making use of that batch job launcher. I am trying to send the data from postman. Okay, so from postman, if you observe, so here is the URL basically localhost 8080 jobs import customer /import customer /customer profile data. This is the name of that file basically. So here if you see, I've created one controller class over here. So here if you see the customer class, we are passing the request mapping as /jobs. This is a file name pattern. It will follow a certain kind of pattern over here. Okay, like customer underscore profile underscore data underscore the date format. Okay, so that pattern should be followed. And then this is the post mapping basically. So here import customer /file name we are passing over here. Then there's a job launcher over here. Okay, it will internally launch the job. Okay, then we are passing the file name because it has been passed from the request URL. Okay, then that file name will be processed here. It will be added to the job parameter builder. And then we are checking that whether that file name is valid or not based upon this file name pattern, which we have set it above. Okay, based upon this file name pattern, it will check whether that file name is valid or not. So I've created this method like pattern.matches. This is the file name pattern, which is this. It will follow that whether this particular pattern is followed or not. Okay, so if it checks that particular pattern is followed with your file name, then yes, it will process it. It will become true. And once it's returned true, it will go inside and it will launch your job. And as soon as the job gets launched with the job and the job parameters, then internally those all steps will be executed, like run job, then steps, then reader, processor, writer. Then after that, the data will come over here and then we will get the job execution status, like whether it's completed or it's abandoned or failed. So it will show you if there's any kind of exception coming in any of the steps, this job execution status will show as failed. Okay. So this is the thing basically how it is getting worked internally. So any kind of exception is being thrown in try block, it will go to catch block and so like job is failed with exception. Okay. So this is the way basically we have to implement a Spring batch mechanism. Okay. Is my server is up? No. So here, if you can observe, Tomcat started on port 8080, started batch processing demo application in this much seconds. Okay. So now let's jump onto the 8080 console. Okay. H2 console I'm going. So if you remember in application.properties, we have set username password as root. So here also we are setting data as root and root. We are running it, select star from customers underscore info. So if I run it, you will see there are no rows. That means no record is present currently in this database. So now I will hit it. So now let me hit it. It's getting executed. So here, if you observe, it is showing all those queries which is being run internally. Okay. See here, insert query, select query. So what is actually doing? Those reader, processor, writer, those processes it's getting involved over here. So it will insert the data into database. It will for deletion, it will check whether data is already exists in the database with, for that ID or not. If it's there, it will delete the data from the database and then it will insert. So those all operations are going on as of now. Okay. So let me see in here. So it's showing completed. That means the batch execution status is showing as completed now. Job execution status is completed now. So let me check into this database. So here, if you can observe, the currently it's showing no rows. So now let me run it again. So now all those 1,000 records is being printed over here. It's printed synchronously one by one. If you see, all data is coming in proper synchronous fashion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like that data is being shown over here. So if you see, the total time took around 22 seconds. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I want to implement it in an asynchronous fashion so that it takes lesser time to process all those data, thousands records into the database. Okay. So let me show you like how many records are there in the database. Select count of star from customers underscore info. So if I execute this, so 1,000 records are coming into this database. Yeah. Okay. So now what we have to do over here, we have to reduce the time. It's taking a lot of time to process thousands of records into database. Okay. So if I go to this Spring Batch config, so at last, basically I've commented it out for the task executor. So here I've implemented a task executor with the help of which basically it process asynchronously. Okay. So the results may not come in proper sequence fashion, but the processing will become faster. Okay. So we have to provide it into the step. Basically, we have to copy it, pass the data into the step. We have to pass it to the task executor, and then we have to pass it over here, task executor method. Yeah. So I've written a step now. Now I have to rerun it again. Let me rerun it. So you can see this batch processing demo application started in 25 seconds. So it's got started now. So now let's run that endpoint. Previously, it took around 22 seconds. So now it took around 11.5 seconds only. It processed thousands of records just in half of the time with the help of async task executor. Okay. So now let's see into the database basically. So we have to reload it basically. So it will not run now because we have restarted the application, right? So select star from customers underscore info. Okay. So now let me run it. So now you can see it is not following a proper synchronized fashion of printing it into database, right? So it's showing 4, 8, 13, 15. Then it's printing me 1, then 7, 9. It's not following a proper synchronous way of inserting data into database. But it got processed in a much lesser time. So we have to see the requirement, like we have to set the data in the synchronous fashion, or the time is the important thing. So in most of the scenario, time is the important thing. So if we have to store millions of records in a lesser time, we can make use of async task executor as well. Okay. So here, if I do select count of star from customers underscore info, so if you run it, sorry sir, unselected. Okay, so if you run it, you will see 1,000 records are coming over here. Okay, so here if you see, while running the batch job, it creates certain internal tables as well over here. So let me run those tables as well to see what data is present. Batch job execution params. Okay, so what data is present within it? So if I run it, see here, so it's taking data from customer profile data. It's a date value. Okay, then long value, double value. Then the type is string type, file name. So what all things are passed as a parameter over there, right? We have passed job execution parameter, and then within that parameter we have passed this file name, right? So those all things will be showing over here. The key name is the file name. Then job instance, then execution, job execution context is also over there. Okay, so it's of not much use to us. Okay, we will not use it much over there. There is a batch step execution. Okay, this is important. Here it will show all the steps. Select star from batch step execution. So if I run this, so here it will show this is a step name, that step. Okay, start time, end time, how much time it took to process the entire steps. Read count, how many lines from the source file it read. The step basically 1,000 lines it read. Then write count, it has written all those 1,000 lines into the database. Okay, no, nothing has been skipped. Exit code completed. That means the batch execution, job execution status is completed now. Okay, so everything will be shown over here. So these tables are being internally created by Spring Batch as soon as you start the application. Okay, so this is the entire thing, basically how the batch processing works internally. Okay, and one more thing I wanted to show you. So we have made use of postman, right, to process the entire set of data. So if I don't want to make use of postman, how can you process that? So we will be uncommenting this part. Here, if you see, we are making use of application context, because if you observe that the annotation which you have used was header enable batch processing, which internally makes use of multiple contexts, which is application context. So we are storing the data, the run method within this application context. Okay, and same thing, the run method, I am passing it over here, so we can comment it out this part. Okay, so we are storing the data into this application context, and then we are launching the job. Context.getBean. This is the batch job launcher which you have created over here. Okay, and will automatically it will automatically call that bean batch job launcher. Okay, and then after that it will store the status over here. This file name is present. With that file name, it will launch the job automatically, and it will print the job execution result over here. Okay, so now let me relaunch the application once. See here, automatically all the insertion, selection, all those queries are being processing. I have just restarted the application. I haven't done anything else. I haven't hit any endpoints. I haven't done any kind of stuff. It will automatically do insertion, selection, those queries it will automatically hit. Okay, and now if you see the data into database, let me copy this, because we have restarted the application, so it will not process. So if you try to run it, it will not run. It will start the application again, because you have restarted the application, right? So let me give password. So I'm printing those table data. So now I have to see the data present within it. So here you can see all the records are coming in the customer information table. This information is coming after the current server up, basically. So I have run up this server. So after server gets up, After that only I'm seeing this. So this information is coming now. So if you see the count of all the information, it will be 1,000 only. Okay, showing 1,000. So here I haven't made use of any postman. So it can be the requirement in your organization that you should not make use of any tools to execute this batch processing. So in that scenario, what you can do, you can make use of internal application context, and from there you have to get the bean of this batch job launcher, and then we have to process the launch job method. Okay, so here if you see in the batch job launcher, don't worry, I will share you the entire code in the description. Basically, from there you can get to know. So it contains the same data which was there in the controller class. Okay, so basically it is not going to controller class, rather it's going to the replica of the same mechanism, but not through postman. Okay, so here we are setting the job parameter, adding string, file name, start at. It's checking whether it's valid file name or not. If it's valid, it will go to job launcher.run. Same things what we have done with the controller class, same thing is being done over here. If you say in the controller class, similar thing only I'm doing, similar thing. But the difference is we are passing the mapping URL. Okay, but here we are not passing those matching URLs. Okay, so this is a difference. Basically, this is a batch job launcher. Okay, so it's similar to controller, but without any URL mapping. Okay, so this is the way with the help of which we can send the data through postman or without postman, and that is through H2 database, which we have shown just now. Okay, so now it's the homework for you. Try to write it down in the comment box, like what all things you have learned and how was the session today. And I want you to implement this thing basically by yourself. Okay, don't just copy paste, try to implement and learn by yourself, and try to do it with your any third party SQL database like Oracle SQL, MySQL. Try to put it, try to configure those database information in the application.yaml or properties file, and then you try to process this data. That is a homework for you. And do let me know in the comment box once you have completed that step, like yes, you have done implementing with your own Oracle or SQL database, and you have implemented an entire step. Okay, so I want to see your comments in the comment box so that I will get to know, like, yes, you are learning, you are implementing things, and then the combined goal will be accomplished together. Okay, so we'll see you in the next lecture with next set of topics. Till then, it's Devjit Roy signing off. Bye bye.